Välkommen till den lättsamma podden Let Me Know om den amerikanska rockgruppen Kiss med Marco och Bernt. Nu kör vi!
Välkomna till en trevlig podd där vi ska prata med Julian Gill. Och han är författare till den boken Daniel håller och till den här boken. Och det är inte två olika böcker. Not different books, is only the cover is different. Och vi gör en liten introduktion här på svenska innan vi går över till engelska. För Julian har inte lärt sig svenska ännu tyvärr.
Ja, det är bedrövligt egentligen.
Ja, det är
Man tycker
bedrövligt.
att han borde ha gjort det.
För det är ett stort språk, svenska.
Ja,
och
visst.
det är mycket svenskar i USA, men inte tillräckligt mycket. Men
Han talade svenska i den podden han var med i
Ja,
häromsommaren.
men just
det var AI då. Det var AI.
Nej, det kan inte ha varit AI.
Nej, det var inte uppfunnet då.
He spoke Swedish. I remember that. In the podcast he spoke Swedish. So I know that Julian can speak Swedish. No problem whatsoever.
Så ska vi sätta igång? Jag kan börja med att säga att jag är inte i toppform i alla fall. Så att alla som lyssnar på podden vet att jag är lite dålig. Så att vi hoppas att Bernt och Daniel är i toppform. De brukar vara i toppform.
You are what they say over there, under the weather. I had no clue what that meant, but I've learned that. You are under the weather.
Ja, det betyder att man är lite sjuk.
Under the weather?
Under the weather,
lite hängig sådär.
But you're every time under the weather. Are you sick every day then?
Oh yes. Every time.
That was very fun.
Sick every time.
Are this right, Julian, that you call it under the weather when you're sick?
You can do. Sick as a dog.
That's better. Sick as a dog. Okay, that's better. But I'm not sick as a dog, but I not go sniffing around and that. So not so sick. Okay, welcome, Julian, to the show, som vi say. So we do here. And we are going to talk about this book, but we are going to start with the man, the myth, and the podcast man, Julian Gill. Yes. And you are not the podcast boy because that man we have in Sweden, the podcast boy, is Bernt. He has a song about that podcast boy. But we have a song about Julian Gill too. Have you heard that? The song about you, Julian? We played.
He unearths the secrets we try to hide deep inside. We took the ride. Julian Gill, you got the history, you got the skill.
Wow.
Julian Gill,
You managed to get Gene to sing that one. That's great.
I called Gene in Monday and he said, okay, I do a demo.
You have some context on it.
Yeah. So that's good. So we start with the obsession. How do you get obsessed in Kiss, Julian?
How does anyone
and why?
get obsessed with Kiss? 1985, which
So
we'll be talking
late.
about.
85, okay.
We'll be talking about that on our show this week. But 1985, I was coming out of Catholic school and going into public school. So I was going from strict regimen into Animal Farm.
Yes.
So there was just a lot more exposure to different music going on, and I started paying more attention to MTV, and it quickly shifted my musical taste from where they had been. You know, I was listening to Duran Duran, Men at Work, and the Beatles and John Lennon. Pretty much that was my music. But once you start watching MTV and you see Twisted Sister, Quiet Riot, Def Leppard, and then in late 1985, Motley Crue, Smoking in the Boys' Room, Home Sweet Home. And of course, Kiss, Tears Are Falling, and All Night. So those were kind of the driving factors that led me into heavy metal or hard rock. But 1985, it was just an inundation of really kind of commercial hard rock that was very accessible, very visual, outrageous, lots of girls, motorcycles, and all the sorts of
Okay.
things that any 14-year-old boy is going to kind of enjoy, I guess, to a certain extent. So, I fell in love with Asylum.
Okay.
And on my birthday that year, I went down to the store and I bought Asylum, and I loved the album, start to finish. It was something fresh to my musical taste. I'd been, again, basically listening to Men at Work and the Beatles all my life, and here was something from start to finish was as good as the hard rock that I'd heard.
Okay. Did
Then-
you know from the beginning that they have the makeup on? Not
Nope.
the 85 makeup, the early makeup. You don't know that?
No clue.
Ah.
I mean, even when I first
yeah.
moved to America in 1978, a bunch of kids did a talent show. And the first week I was in school there, they went up on stage in black leotards, their mommy's makeup and aluminum, and mimed to do some Black Diamond. And I had no idea. In 1985, I had no idea that was the same band.
Okay.
No connection for me. A complete ignorance. I hadn't paid any attention to that sort of thing. The only hard rock or heavy metal I knew was Quiet Riot and Def Leppard.
That is very interesting because a lot of people that we have interviewed during the years found out about Kiss through Animalize and that year. And I was so amazed because I thought every Kiss fan has been part of the Kiss fan mania since the 70s. I was so amazed and so surprised. And I mean, we have done so many shows and we asked the same question. How did you get to know Kiss? And when did your Kiss fever exploded? Like Marco has a fever now. But anyhow, so I thought that was just a Swedish thing, but now I know it's a universal. And I mean, you were a Brit and you're an American now and you're an Animalized guy. Yes.
No, Asylum.
Asylum guy.
Asylum guy.
I'm
Asylum.
He
I'm
went
so
nuts.
sorry. Yeah. Marco has the fever and I have no memory, so
That's been
I don't know if Julian knows this, but in Sweden we call it the second wave of Kiss. 84 with Heavens on Fire made a huge impact over here. Of course, in Norway, Denmark, and Finland as well, but mainly in Sweden, it was huge over here. And a lot of the podcasters that are active today in Sweden are Animalized guys. It was probably their biggest hit over here, I think, Heavens on Fire. And to this
I didn't
day,
even notice it. Didn't notice it at all.
You didn't
I mean,
notice Heavens on Fire over in Britain?
well, in America, I was in upstate New York in
Okay, you were there already.
1978 to 1987, and I didn't know anything about Kiss. I mean, that's the one show on the Animalized tour where Mark St. John played, was in the town where I was living at the time, Binghamton.
Okay.
And I remember kids coming in, as was the case, I went to the concert last night. I'm like, whatever. I didn't go to a concert until 1987. It didn't mean anything to me, So I didn't have any of the reference points. We weren't the only heavy metal bands that we spoke about. And I had a very close friend who was big into the Beatles as well. And he introduced me to Def Leppard in 1983. Okay. And then a friend's sister's brother introduced me to Quiet Riot that year. But in terms of passion, it was only Asylum that ignited. And I think a lot of that has to do with what happens after you buy that first album. When it works for you and you suddenly see in the record store a stack full of cassettes of all different names, and you slowly start each week buying one after the other, it's such an inundation of material without context that it almost starts pulling you in. I've got to learn more about this. Who's this guy? What's that? What's the history? What's the meaning? It's like trying to collect Beatles albums in a kind of similar way, that all of a sudden you're finding out about Blue Labels, Camel Labels, because there are all these special things listed in the record stores about all these records. So it's a spark. And it could have happened with any band. It only happened with two for me, and that's Aerosmith and Kiss at the same time, ones that remain my passion to this day. No explanation. Tears Are Falling. It was a fun video. Volcanoes, mountains, swinging on vines and all night with, obviously universal themes.
But when you discovered the makeup Kiss, what do you think about that?
I immediately knew that there was something bigger than what I was enjoying. While I will defend Asylum to the death to this day because it's my entry point, I immediately recognized that there was something magical that I could never be a part of, that I could never understand, that I could only enjoy by listening and later, obviously, researching. So I'm overcompensating for missing out on Kiss in the 70s.
Okay, that's the obsession. You have overcompensating you now. Okay,
Probably.
then I understand. Okay.
Yeah.
What was the first makeup album you bought?
The first makeup album, I believe, probably Double Platinum or Alive.
The Kiss Double Platinum album, a tribute unprecedented in music history. Here's Neil Bogart.
For the success story of the decade, Casablanca honors Kiss with Double Platinum. Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Peter Criss, and Ace Frehley.
20 Double Platinum songs remixed and brand new Strutter 78. Kiss Double Platinum.
Because back then I was going by quantity. Just to obtain the catalog, I would look at which album had the most songs on it and simply buy it. Now, I think it was probably Double Platinum because it had a shiny cover. And of course, shiny objects make Kiss fans throw their money. So probably that or Alive.
Good picks.
The Double Platinum it's Bernd's favorite album when we go to the vinyl markets and looking for albums. He always talk about that album.
But what a great album it was. It had such a great mix of material. I didn't know anything about remixes or things in the wrong sequence. Ignorance is a wonderful thing when you're just enjoying or discovering.
Yes. And the thing with the Swedish version of Double Platinum is that back in 1978, when I had the first Kiss fan club, Kiss fan service, I went to every shop in Stockholm and outside Stockholm to put on my little label that says, please join Kiss fan service. And I thought it was a great idea. Today, I think it sucks because you can never peel away that little label. But so every time Marco and I go to record stores or other similar venues, I'm always into, I wonder if this is a Swedish version from 1978. Have a look at this, Marco. This is the original version. Look at that label. And Marco goes, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Okay.
Sticker on cover. Available slightly cheaper.
Yeah.
But why did you start the podcasting thing with Daniel and everything? The podcast.
Well, it's all Daniel's fault.
It's
Not
only
my
Daniel's
fault.
fault?
It's only Daniel's fault. Yeah. No, I had no interest in podcasting. there was another podcast that lost one of its hosts, and they invited me to be a fill-in while they looked for a replacement, and I turned them down. So I don't want to do that. I'm not interested. And then Daniel decided to post on the FAQ about doing a podcast, and people started putting their names in for contention. And I'm at that point, I'm like, well, if it's going to be a KISS FAQ podcast, I kind of have to be there. You can't represent the FAQ without me, and I'll see how it goes. I figured I wouldn't be involved very long.
Okay.
I didn't want to be involved very long. I figured we'd find a good pool of people and they could fight it out themselves who's going to be on each week, and they could run it themselves. And as long as I, approved of the general direction and tone of the podcast, then I wouldn't have to bother with wasting my time with it. Now, as it turns out, I actually enjoyed it.
But that is not something else you have. You said you want to be on every show. You have to let it go, the show, and the podcast continues without you. But you're there now, and you're a captain of the podcast. And sometimes very hard captain on the time and everything. you get panic when it's over 1 hour. You get panic in your eyes many times. I don't understand why. Can you explain why you get the panic when it's over an hour?
I don't really mind how long a show is.
Yes, you mind. Yes.
In the past week, we've done, a revisit of Destroyer that was well over 2 hours.
Yeah.
I've done podcasts that were 3 hours or more, and I just don't like consuming anything that goes on and on without focus, because it sometimes starts rambling and becoming disjointed. I have a little sheet of notes of things I want to touch on, and I scribble down things during the show. But for the most part, they naturally go to about an hour with our group of participants. Now, obviously, I'm directing.
Yes, I see that.
I'm controlling and hosting, so maybe I'm imposing and forcing. But I think a lot of people who listen to our shows, our kind of audience, prefer an hour or even less.
But there's something that I think is very interesting in this, and that is then a long time ago, before we started podcasting, I had no idea that you had a Swede amongst you. Didn't know that Daniel wasn't that, because you only use their first names, like Ken, Julian, Daniel, etc. So, and there was one day that I was thinking, doesn't that guy have a tiny, tiny accent? Is that Swedish by any chance? So I called him up, because Daniel was totally unknown in Sweden, in KISS, in the KISS universe in Sweden. And I called him up, and I was asking, hey, are you a Swede by any chance? And then he spoke to me in his local Swedish accent. And now he is very well known, both at KISS FAQ and on the Let Me Know podcast. Yeah. So
he absolutely deserves it for it.
Yeah.
Again, he's the passion that came up with the root idea that became the KISS FAQ podcast. He's had so many great ideas for show topics, quizzes. It's just an endless list of contributions that Daniel makes to the show through his participation, his idea, and most of all, his enthusiasm. He loves KISS. He loves talking KISS. And if I let him, he'd talk for 3 hours KISS in English, at least until he got tired.
Yeah. And that is the fun part. And I was thinking, is Daniel a part of the KISS Let Me Know podcast, or is he part of the KISS FAQ podcast? We have to fight about this, Julian, sometime. Is he ours or yours? Or he's
all of ours. He's part of the KISS podcasting community. And
that's the best way.
That's the best way to look at it, to not be tribal and say that he's ours. No, he's not. He's ours. No, he's a gift to any show that he's on.
Yeah. Wow. We know. Now he knows too.
What happened with Daniel now? You're so quiet now.
You're making me blush over here.
Good. Hey, you deserve the kudos.
Yeah, he deserves it. He's very good.
Everyone on the show who's been a part of it from the beginning to today, deserves kudos for giving time and, being brave of putting out your opinions, because it's easy to be someone who sits back and throws food at the computer screen when you disagree. When you put out your opinion and your thoughts in public, there's no escaping them, and you have to own them. If they're misinterpreted or if you misspeak, again, you don't get to run away from what you say on a podcast, but you can hide on the other side of a microphone and just listen through the headphones. And then, well, what have you done? You've supported us, and we appreciate it. But again, it takes bravery, I think, for anyone to come on camera and to share life stories and the story of our journeys, both, those that connect about KISS and those that don't connect about KISS, because we go off topic.
Yeah, that's good. I have a second question here about the podcast too. And the cast you have there, have they been the same cast, the same guys from the beginning, or it's coming and going?
We've evolved. We've picked people up along the way. Some people have come in intermittently and not come back. We've tried to keep things fresh. One of the things that we've tried to do is to always be open to bringing new folk on and become part of the family, as Paul Stanley would say, because we want to represent fandom, which means representing all aspects of fandom. So we've had a vast number of people who've come through the show, and we've got our regulars who are always ready to kind of show up week in and week out. So it changes. There's no closed doors. There's no one who's banned from previous appearances.
I'd just like to add one thing, Mark, before you get to the next question. I think Julian is very easy to deal with. There's no hinders. There's nothing in the way of people being a part of the podcast. I felt very welcomed when I started off there with Julian, and I know that's the case with everyone who's been a part of the podcast. There's no boundaries. Anyone can be a part of it. But what I realized after some time was that it's hard to be a part of a podcast if you're supposed to be there week in and week out, and that's not for everyone. So I think we found a cast of like 5 guys that you can depend on. Because you can have a guy, he's into KISS for a year. The next year he wants to do something else. So I think the KISS FAQ podcast, you have a core that's very solid, and that these guys, I can trust these guys. And then sometimes you have other guys being a part of it, but you have to have the core of a like 4 or 5 guys that you can rely on. Because when we started it off, my idea was to have a rotating cast of characters, people from Argentina, people from Russia, and all over the world. But
and women,
we've always been looking for females to be a part of the podcast. We haven't yet have a single one on. I think in
not
well over
any
10
women
years.
at all.
No women at all.
Yeah.
So that's and it's been very fun to be a part of the podcast, and I've learned a lot from Julian. I didn't even know he wrote books when I wrote that first message to him, that he was this well-known KISS author. If I'd known that, I might not have, had the guts to contact him, and the KISS FAQ podcast would never have been a thing.
Yeah, thank
that's
goodness
good.
you did.
You have writing many books. How many books is it? 30 or something?
48, I guess.
I don't keep count.
Of course you keep counting.
It's not a soccer match. There's no scorecard.
How many books have you done?
I really have no clue.
Are you
whatsoever.
sure about that?
Yeah, 10 how many have I done? I've done probably 10. How many has Tim done? Tim's done, 3 that I've contributed to. So you got to always make the differentiation on the things that started out as Tim's projects for the website. The solo albums book was, again, his idea, as was Odyssey. And then, of course, we did package up other interviews as the other side of the coin at my behest. So I don't know, because I've done 2 Aerosmiths, 2 Def Leppards, and a whole bunch of Kiss ones. But there have been a lot of different additions that make the numbers seem greater than the actual original
40
works.
Yeah.
Then
40
we have a very business question. Which artist makes most money? Kiss, Def Leppard, Aerosmith, which band?
Kiss.
Kiss makes more money. Okay.
Sadly, while I love my Aerosmith books because they combine what I do with On Tour with Kiss Alive Forever, are just not successful. And the Def Leppard one, while it was respected, the second one anyway, the first one was a bit of a mess, complete failure. So Kiss fans, you rule. You guys really support creators and authors and writers and compilers, which is what I describe myself
Are
as
the
more.
big difference in sales? And if you say
Huge.
it's a huge difference.
Huge.
Okay.
Gigantic.
What
Massive.
about over the world? Where do you move the most units? I mean, of course, you move the most units in North America, but can you sell books in like Australia, Japan, South America? I mean, you have to have the statistics from Amazon.
South America is more of a challenge.
Okay.
And a lot of that's down to print facilitator or printing and access and availability for those markets. In terms of markets, obviously the United States and North America is the largest market, but it's less than 50%.
Okay.
May I ask you this? Because I was very surprised, because I thought that I knew everything about you, Julian, but no, I didn't. I found out that you can buy your books at the Swedish Amazon store. And I was so surprised, because that turns everything so easy. I mean, if one want to buy all your books, all you can do is go to Amazon.se and look up Julian Gill and Jill, and then just buy the whole rack of it.
Yeah, that's the most important thing, Bernd, is to have these available in local markets and take shipping out of the equation. Shipping has become a business killer, and we don't need to talk about the reasons behind any of that.
We know, and you amongst friends here.
But in terms of having availability now, because all of my stuff is print on demand, none of it's through a proper publisher. There's no advances. They get an order, they print it, or they've got a very small stock available. Is to have those markets such as Sweden, Germany, France, nearly every EU country is represented with local distribution. Great Britain, UK has its own, Australia and Japan. Also, except for hardcovers, it's made it a lot easier. And what it's allowed me is to keep the prices down, because I take a very minimal royalty on each book, because it's never been about making money. So obviously each market has higher or lower print costs depending on all of those dynamics. But it's critically important for them to be available. Now, if I could just get them translated to really make things easier. But one quick thing about sales is I did log in today to see what my number 2 market was.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the number 2 market on 13% is Sweden.
That's pretty cool.
How about that?
Yeah. Nice.
That means that you need to do a lot of more publicity amongst us to sell your stuff.
You know, if I need a justification for coming on your podcast, other than you're great guys, you know, there we go. Thank you, Sweden. Your support's very much appreciated, and you guys have always been big supporters of both me and obviously of Kiss and Kiss-related projects, be them records or solo releases by the band members. So again, Scandinavia is a massively important market for Kiss. And a massively appreciated one by anyone who creates.
That's good.
May I ask you regarding your books? Is all your books available at the Swedish Amazon store? First question. Second question is, why not? And the third question is, do you sometimes refuse to sell books that you have written for any reason, or can one buy audiobooks right now?
Books go in and out of print. So stuff like the Kiss album Focus, which is actually about to celebrate its 25th anniversary, is no longer available and won't be available again. And that's down to, I would never put that out again, because when I last looked back at the manuscripts and started trying to correct grammar, typos, and all of that, I rapidly needed to go out and buy some beer. It was so depressing, because hopefully my skills have evolved in 25 years. But it was just shocking that I actually put that out. So I that'll never be in print again in that form. Plus, Wikipedia pretty much is the same thing now. So it's been ingested by AI. So long answer, Bernd. Some things stay in print. Others, like War Machine and Mask Hysteria, I deliberately keep limited editions, because I'm not going for long term in most cases unless I have a high level of costs to recoup. And some projects were very, very expensive to realize, so they stay in print much longer. And some are popular enough that they justify, a book like Odyssey. I've recently lowered the price on that nearly down to zero royalty, so that it stays in print, because it's still, healthily, even with its, kind of grammar and a few things that we could have done or I could have done to improve it.
Just real quick about other books. I mean, now that you've released War Machine, how does it affect sales of the other books? Do you see that fans find War Machine first of all, and then move on and buy like other older books like Mask Hysteria? So I would think that when people pick this one up now, they might feel like, wow, this is a great book. What did he write before this? And then they maybe pick up
Well,
Mask
Amazon
Hysteria.
does that for me, Daniel.
Okay.
If you log on to Amazon and you load a book into your cart, it usually says, at least in the US and UK versions, would you also like to buy?
Yeah,
It's the same.
but can you see the actual numbers that you managed to sell older books now?
I could see how many books have sold at any time. So
I can say, when I ordered this book on Amazon, I go up and order this. There was I get a discount of 30% on the books. And then I got the list, and you can buy this. There was a lot of books I bought.
Yeah, you bought a lot of books. I saw that.
I think it's come 5 or 6 books with Kiss. But because I have the other books with you, Julian, so I don't need them. But I bought the new 76 book and everything. But that was too much coffee table book for me. The 76 book.
Yeah.
Different sort of thing, different author, different purpose. What I try and do, why I enjoy doing a book like War Machine or Mask Hysteria, is it allows me to kind of scrapbook a lot of the memos. When I've been collecting information for decades now, and I've got something like 10,000 pages of documentation, it's like, what do I do with this? And that's why I like to do the scrapbook rather than a coffee table book. Coffee table book is a paperweight.
Yes.
It's nice to look through. I've got the Kiss 76 book. I love looking at the pictures, because I don't really do that online. But in terms of, say, information, what's a guy like me going to get out of that?
Nothing. It's too little information.
Well, I get to see someone else's interpretation, but I'm kind of set in my view.
What fans is more demanding, the Kiss fans or Aerosmith fans or Def Leppard fans?
Oh, Kiss fans.
Are they very demanding?
Demanding isn't a good word, because it almost sounds like a negative. Kiss fans have a different level of passion, and a different desire to be surprised, or very set in opinions that even if you present them evidence, it's like, no, I believe this. So I'm not going to say demanding. It's a passion.
Okay, the passion.
Because Kiss fans are far more passionate about off the soundboards, box sets, books, videos, anything anyone creates. The Kiss Army. Oh, if they like what you do, they're there. And if they don't like what they do, they're going to tell you. So
Okay.
it's absolutely incredible. Again, from the creative point of view, to have a customer base, a peer group, all these different things, a group of friends who are going to support what you do, and they're really going to consume it. They're going to look and make sure that you've got it right. So it's fantastic. It
Okay.
makes it such a more challenging experience and a much more validating one.
Are you scary when a new book is coming out? Are you scary for what they are telling about the book and everything?
Yes,
Okay.
petrified.
Okay, but we are going to do the big book, Ace book. Are you very scary about that too? Yeah, you are very scary.
Even more so.
Even more
yeah.
so. Okay. Okay, that's good. That's good because then it's going to be a good book.
Well, because you can't take anything for granted.
No.
You have to be afraid. Before, if you make a video and you put it up, you have to be sure, or as sure as you can be, in order to defend why you did it that way. Or again, you have to believe in what you're doing before you let anyone else judge it. And when they do judge it, then you learn something as well. You know, with anything I've ever done, I've always kind of had to shrug, go, yeah, but you do the best with what you have available to you at that time. After the fact, when everyone comes in, well, you got this wrong because I've got this. Well, that doesn't do me any good whatsoever. So yeah, fear.
Okay,
But
that's
Marco,
good.
before you continue, can I ask just one question?
Yeah,
I mean,
ask
not
question.
counting the last book, because you're like Kiss, the latest album is always the best. But I've always wondered, Julian, since you've written so many Kiss books, do you have a favorite among your own Kiss books? And why do you like that so much?
Amongst my own, and
Yeah.
I'm going to leave. I'm
I
going
mean,
to leave the ones.
You're excluding the Elder and the Soul albums, or?
I'm going to leave out the ones that Tim had the creative germ for, because that wouldn't be fair to Tim. Again, Tim was the creative visionary behind the solo album book and Odyssey. Again, he did the vast majority of interviews and transcription and all of that. That is only for him to take credit for. I did a couple of interviews and packaged it all up and did all the extraneous part of those. But again, the core is his. And if I have to pick one of those, I'll take the solo album book. But for my own, Mask Hysteria.
Yeah, agreed. And that's the previous publication by Julian from, I think it was released in 2023, just a couple of years back. So if you have this one and like it, you need to get that one as well, you fans out there. It's a great book. It's pretty similar in look and feel.
And the size. The size is the bigger size of the book, because the other books are little smaller than this one. Aren't they? But not the book about the live shows. They are very big. They are very big.
Marco, live shows is something totally different.
That book, Oh, you can kill somebody with that book.
Yeah, those are encyclopedias.
Yes.
Rather than books. That's just a compilation of data. That's not really, while I do write the narrative sections introducing each tour, that's not writing. That's compiling.
Okay.
And so much of that data, and again, while I've sourced, a lot of it myself or have purchased the sources for it, it's a whole different thing than, say, Mask Hysteria, which is, again, it's a compilation of a story, but it's an expression artistically in trying to represent it visually, and also a lot more writing.
Now we're going to talk about this part.
Have we spoken about Julian's childhood when he was a little kid in the UK? Have we talked about all his?
That's not so interesting. Or is it interesting, Julian? Do you want to talk about your childhood?
No.
No, that's okay. Then it's finished, Bernd. Now you can ask the question about the pod is connecting to the book.
Okay, so you asked whether the pod that I did, what was it, 2024?
The summer of 2024
was connected with War Machine, and yes, because I'd been working on War Machine at that time. War Machine basically starts at the end of Odyssey, is when I started, taking notes and starting thinking about doing a creatures feature of some sort. I didn't know what it was going to be. I had no plan on doing an interview book like that because, again, Tim did all the real work when it came to doing the interviews, and I was more interested in investigating and researching rather than doing that sort of angle. But fast forward to 2022, and Michael James Jackson died.
Yeah.
And after he died, I got a phone call from someone who had bought his storage locker, and he had some items to sell. And one of the items was a 2-inch reel of 2 songs. And he also had some paperwork to go with it. So I bought the lot. And the paperwork that he had, I actually have it here, was Michael James Jackson's contract for Creatures of the Night, signed in February 1982. And Michael signed that, and Howard Marks signed it, and also his Lick It Up contract. And to finally see the contracts with all the details really spurred me on to start working on a narrative version of War Machine, which was just going to be, I don't know if you're familiar with the 33 1/3 series on albums. It's just, they're usually 100-page books that do a dive into a particular album. So I thought I'd just do that. And then it grew. As more information came out, there was another item that came available from the storage locker, and it was Michael James Jackson's day planners from 1975 to 1990, excluding 1983.
No.
But it had 1981, 1982, and both of those are just so full of data, right down to sitting with Gene Simmons and going through the songs that Gene was presenting for Kiss Killers, versus and meeting with Bill Aucoin while they're performing on Fridays. They're meeting with Michael James Jackson to produce the next album. And again, with it being signed in February, and it defined just how the arrangement was going to work for recording that year. First 5 weeks were going to be a trial. It's all detailed in the book, but that's the genesis for the podcast episode. That when you reached out to me and asked if I'd like to fill in and do an episode during the summer, I was like, well, I've got this stuff just sitting here right now. I have no plans, going down the road with it. I'm going to turn that into a podcast episode. And you gave me the perfect opportunity to really focus in on creating something for a podcast episode. So very tightly focused, not with all the details that I wanted to save for the book. So that's where that ties in, Bernd. Very much an important part of the creative process, because I knew it was always going to become part of something bigger. But at that time, it motivated me to actually kick it forward and make some progress on it, and just see what the reception was to it after the Creatures of the Night box set came out.
That's such a wonderful story that you tell. That sometimes you can't say where one thing ends and the other thing starts, and what kicked one thing to another. And but that podcast that you did for us was golden. It was wonderful, and I, at least, and I think Marco too, is so grateful for that.
Yes.
I had fun doing it, and I appreciate the invitation. I was honored to be invited to do it. But as you can tell, with some of the effort that I put into it, how many hours of editing was that? Like 60 or something?
It was
stupid?
crazy.
It was crazy what went into doing that. But again, it motivated me to really start working on War Machine properly, rather than just having it out there as something I would do when perhaps bored.
Yeah, and sometimes people don't realize how long time things like that takes to do. And I'm just talking about the podcast, because the last summer we asked, are you familiar with Reggae Kiss?
I've heard of them.
Yeah, okay. The leader of that band, Reggie Paul, I asked him to do a podcast about his experiences with being Reggie Paul and doing other things as well. And when he finished, he said, "You better like this. I spent 22 hours in the studio with this." And I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't want you to take that many hours." Well, you know, I'm born in the studio and I'm always in the studio. So why shouldn't I do the pod professionally? And I went again. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. But that's why it's so cool to speak with guys like you, because we're on the same level when it comes to passion. You can't find a guy in your normal life that loves a band like I do. But thanks to the internet and stuff like that, you're able to locate other guys on the same level of passion. And, you know, putting in that amount of effort into a podcast like Julian did on that Creatures episode, I mean, it's a lot of hours, but when you're doing it, you enjoy it, and it makes you feel good, and hopefully someone will like to listen to it. But it's not like work. I mean, when we do the podcast, we've been doing the podcast for well over 10 years now, the Kiss FAQ podcast. Every time it's fun. It's like meeting with friends in a bar, and you have friends that's on the same level. And that's very rare. I mean, in real life, that finding someone that matches your level of passion when it's the thing you love the most. Well, not counting your family and stuff like that, but other than that, you're at the same level. You know, the passion is 100%, and I really enjoy it. And so you have to buy the book if you haven't bought it. It's #1 at Amazon in Sweden, and then you go to the Let Me Know podcast and listen to Julian's podcast. That's where he's talking about Creatures. It's a great combination. Read the book, listen to the podcast.
But that was the first expanded form that I did in terms of an audio story. That was, I had done the demo stories for or the song stories series for years. So I saw it as a challenge. I like to keep myself challenged in learning new techniques with either separating audio, cleaning up interviews, and also writing. It lets me craft a different thing. So I'm getting entertainment value out of the creative process. That's first and foremost what I'm getting out of this is I'm entertaining myself, rather than watching TV. So it was the next step. And directly from that, the audio odyssey, where I'm now revisiting The Elder with longer form audio stories, comes out of it as well. So that Let Me Know podcast episode I did really, is a large part of several things now for me.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, you do know, Julian, that you are welcome back if you dare.
But
And
he's here now.
I know.
Didn't you see him up there, Julian?
Let's enjoy the moment.
Yeah. Enjoy the moment. You don't need.
But Marco, it isn't summer. This isn't a summer podcast. This is Julian now live, and I'm cherishing and enjoying every moment of it. And Marco knows this, but sometimes I get a little carried away because we bring people into our show that we love very much. And I'm like, I do love you so very much. Please tell more stories. Come back every hour, every week. Forever
can you take your pill now, bound to go down?
I think
so sorry.
Bernd understands the passion, having been there in the 70s with what he did. He knows the feeling of doing this sort of thing, whether it's podcasting, whether it's doing books, or again, all the forms of entertainment that we share with our fellow fans, or anything you do for another person is deeply rewarding inside. First and foremost.
Yeah. Bernd has the passion, but he needs some who lead him the way.
Some guidance.
Guidance, because he don't manage that at all. That's the bad side of Bernd.
Loose cannon.
Yes, I love that. I mean, doesn't everybody love to have one loose cannon? Not everybody, because Mark is the opposite. He is planning, he's cool, you know exactly what to say, but I'm in the moment. I'm
Well, not that much
always
different
in
than
the
I
moment.
am.
But I can have
when you
fun
take
too,
the,
Bernd.
as Paul Stanley would say, there can only be one steering wheel in the car.
True that.
Oh.
Yeah. He's got a lot of great
Oh.
quote, that Paul Stanley guy. Yeah.
Are we going to talk about this book, or are we
Yeah,
going to
let's-
talk about Bernd here now? What is this? This book? What
Get
is
us
the
back on
most?
track, Marco.
What is the most proud moment of this book?
Oh.
Publishing it.
No,
Yeah.
not publishing. Not take the easy walk here now. What?
I think for War Machine, I'm most proud of the narratives because of new original information. Anytime that you have material and content that you're sharing for the first time that isn't a recycle or a regurgitation or someone else's effort is the most important part of making something unique. So this isn't just a repackaging of On Tour split out in color in expanded format. It's the actual narrative sections that go inside the recording sessions for Kiss Killers, because none of that information was previously available. No one knew that Michael James Jackson was meeting with Howard Marks while they were on the west coast of America to record the Fridays episode. No one knew that. It's come from his date book for the first time. No one knew which songs Gene was pitching for Kiss Killers, only that none of them made the cut. And only with the box set do we know that they even tried Chrome Goes Into Motion. So that sort of thing is what's most rewarding. And that's why I kind of wanted to set the product and the project up to put that information out there, because now it's going to be cut and pasted into Wikipedia. Other people are going to use that information, but they didn't originate it. Now it's out there, fair use. That people can say that with fact, that Bill Aucoin met with Michael James Jackson, that he signed a contract for how many dollars, and this is how the contract was going to work. So that's what it's about to me.
Okay. About
See how serious I look right now?
yeah, that's good. Because I have a,
really serious.
do you really do these books in Word? In the
Yes.
Word?
Yes.
Are you
Microsoft
doing
Word.
it in Word?
100. That's Word.
That's incredible. That's
insane.
that's insane. For me, it's insane. I don't
It's
understand that.
It's utterly stupid as well when you think about it. But let me tell you why. I have Affinity Publisher. I've messed around with InDesign. I cannot get my brain to function with those products. I just can't think in those terms of technology, whereas it takes me 3 seconds to make Word do exactly what I want it to in terms of that layout. I want that image in front of the other. I want to fade that one, blah. I want this background. I can do it like that. And in InDesign or in Affinity, I'm sitting there. I got to do a box.
Okay.
What do you mean I got to do a box? What do you mean I can't do that? And it goes against a workflow that I'm comfortable with. So I do each section as a Word document. I then just generate it out to a PDF, and I combine it as a PDF at 600 DPI, and I go through it and make sure every layers come out as it's supposed to. And unless Daniel tells me to do 2 columns, which messes up the page numbering, then
because I was surprised about that, because I found pages with 2 columns. What I think what happened there? Have he drank beer when he
Have you
designed the
changed
book?
that in the new edition?
yes.
Because
Great! I need to buy another one.
this
Look at
one,
Look
look at that, Daniel.
Yeah.
That's because of you. So,
this is
a round
when
of applause for Daniel, please.
this I have to say. This is when a book
Instead
looks
of-
good.
Like this.
Wow.
I mean, I'm an avid reader, but when I come to the end of the line and I'm trying to find the next one, I miss it, or I end up on the same line sometimes. So I think that was a great decision.
Well, every person listens to their critics at some stage
Okay.
or to some degree. And I did listen back to the preview review podcast, and they were all too nice, too good to me. But Daniel did raise some points that I sat back and I'm like, I'm sure there's
I
a few
think I have
areas where I could
said
use
to
2 columns.
I think I have said that to Daniel too, but I have said, don't say that to Julian. He's not going to be
Oh,
glad then, because if I
but
say I am the opposite, you work in Word, I don't understand Word. That is only for word processing, nothing else.
Well,
I
it
InDesign,
starts
I
out.
know, you know, Julian, I know the InDesign and Photoshop
Mhm.
because I worked in early 90s with that. So that's no problem for me. So I think you did incredible work with Word.
Yeah.
That's
Oh, thank you.
incredible for me. I don't
so
understand that
yeah,
at all, that
so
you managed that.
yeah, but we will not have a computer war in this
No,
podcast, do
we
we?
don't have.
Oh,
But,
no,
Good.
no. I
but
mean,
when
everything starts with paper and pencil, first.
Yeah.
Real writing, and then it goes into Word as a skeleton, and then it becomes a document, and then it becomes a book.
But the picture you worked with, are you working with Photoshop then with the pictures and that? Not? What are you
No.
working with there? What program?
In print screen.
I use 2 programs. Number one is PaintShop Pro from 1997.
Okay. Then you
Um,
have to take a trip to Sweden. I can learn you InDesign and Photoshop
We
in
can
1
teach
week.
you. Yeah.
We can teach you
And
that.
I also use a more modern version of PaintShop Pro as well.
A modern
but there's-
version. I don't see that exist anymore.
Yeah, it does. It's Corel.
That company.
Yeah.
That exists still? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, the tools that I
That
use.
was early 90s when that was good.
Well, the version I use it's only like 100 megs to install. It's 16-bit. It still works.
Okay, InDesign these days is, I think, 1.5 gigabytes. I think.
Well,
Yeah.
again, can I work with layers? Can I
Yes.
work with floating
Yes.
selections?
Yes.
Can I expand and
Yes.
contract? Can I do all of that in my paint
Yes.
product? And can I quickly browse all my folders for images? Again, in terms of what I need to do. Now, can I then throw them into Topaz and work on them? Can I throw them
But
into
they don't
the
use
modern?
Topaz too much. There you
Very,
get,
very little. Only
There you
gently
get
for
Ayabaya in
scaling.
Swedish. Ayabaya.
Yeah.
Topaz, Ayabaya.
Ayabaya in Swedish.
Uh,
That's a
It
big
comes in
no-no.
handy.
Ayabaya.
Well, when you're working with lower resolution newsprint, it's very good for cleaning up
Yeah,
the
but
words.
Photoshop is better than that. They have a very good filter
But let's
for that.
move on from the
Yeah,
technical
we
stuff,
go
guys.
away from that.
I have a question that I wanted to ask Julian, and that's, there's a lot of cool clippings in this book.
Yes.
For example, this is a clipping from, I guess, a Brazilian newspaper or something after the gig they did there in South America.
Now, read the 10th line of the second column and tell me what it says without a magnifying glass.
That's pretty hard, but it's great, and the book is filled with great clippings, great memos. I want to know, how did you get a hold of all these clippings and memos, and was the KISS Army very helpful in getting a hold of all these clippings and memos, or did you do it all by yourself, going to the libraries?
No. I obviously do. I do libraries myself. There's online archives as well that I utilize. There are fans, including some Scandinavians who you will know from the Destroyer magazine, who contribute and assist. Without the fans to share, to not be, hoarders of information, these projects don't happen. The vast majority of things I've accumulated, and I don't remember the sources for a lot of things, to be perfectly honest, because I keep things in buckets for years until it's time to feed. And then I see what I have and what I can use. But I do ask for contributions, and the KISS Army has always been very generous in providing and assisting. Memos I bought at auctions, memos I bought privately, and again, stuff like contracts I bought privately. So I accumulate through many different ways. Auction sites, again, have a large archives associated with them as well. A lot of the ticket stubs I collected out of archives over the years to the point where I don't remember where they came from, but it's an image of a ticket stub, which I always find appealing to help tell the story. There's the stub, and because a person who went to that show sees it and no longer has their stub, and they remember, oh, that's what it looked like. So little visual cues. But short answer, doesn't happen without contributions and a lot of assistance by people who often aren't mentioned in the thanks list. They just give things over the years, are always there for you, always willing.
This is very interesting, I think. This is a War Machine book, and what did this guy do
Chris.
here? He's not
Yeah.
a War Machine.
No, but 1982 is when his album came out, and in Mass Hysteria, I had Out of Control. So there's a certain symmetry in having it featured again, because it was tied in with recovering from The Elder, in that Peter was able to do a second album for Casablanca, though only the European market picked it up.
This is a very cool looking ad.
Yeah. Wonder where that comes from.
It's from Norway, I think, when I read it. That is very cool ad. Because I like the Peter Criss section in the book.
Well, I'm a Peter Criss fan, so give me, where else am I going to get to write about Let Me Rock You and it? But again, it ties in with Kiss because Gene's songs ended up on the album, and Bill also got songs from Russ Ballard for Peter to record, so it's connected. So it's not in there gratuitously. Okay, a little bit, but not completely.
And then you have
is
the
connected.
Killers here and everything too. The Killers books and The Way to the Elder. That's very nice to read about that. I
It's a
think.
nice transition from the previous book. You get all the years from the last book focused on 79, 80, and now you get a little bit of The Elder and Peter's solo stuff, and so it's. I have a question. I mean, you mentioned at the top of the show that your introduction to Kiss was Asylum in 1985, and now you've done a book that covers like 80, 81 with Kiss, Hysteria, and this one covers 82 to 83. Then we have the years 84 and 85, big years over here in Scandinavia, and you're shaking your head. So there's no continuation of this, with a pink.
There's a continuation of it, but it'll be 1983 and 84. The original idea behind War Machine was that it was going to literally be the whole Vinnie Vincent era. And part one of the book would be Creatures, part two would be Lick It Up, part three, a single page for Animalize. But when it got to the point where it was going to be a $75 book to print, it's just not economic. Color has gone up. So I had to split it. But I wasn't quite done with Lick It Up yet. There's still things I want to try and, accomplish with that part of the book. So it's very far along in terms of being developed. Whether or not I finish it's another matter, because with Aceland taking priority, again, I don't know what I'll be able to sit down and actually have the enthusiasm needed to wrap up the loose ends there.
Can I ask you one thing about the Iceland book? I asked Marco a gazillion times. I never get a straight answer from him. How did that book start? And was it you or was it Ken Sharp? Or how did it all started from the very, very beginning?
Ace and Ken. Yeah. I came in after the fact. Again, we've been going 29 months on Aceland. I don't really want to talk too much about that because there's a lot in flux still with the project, other than to say with that, Ace went on a podcast in, I think it was February 2024. And at that point, we'd been working several months at that stage, because I still have files and folders and material going from that. And that's when he spoke about working on a book with Ken, So that's where that one starts. And one last thing on that is the text is done. 405,000 words.
Wow. That's all I can say. Wow. But then we found out how it started. It was Ace Frehley himself.
Mhm.
And
I'm
Bernt, I think it's going to be a very big book.
Oh,
I think
yes.
so.
Literally.
You,
Yeah.
if,
Very big book, because
and if it's hard,
if I say so, we have done it's 2 sections, and every section is nearly 100 pages, and that's only 2 sections, or what we say about the early times, and then was the after Kiss times,
yeah.
and it's very
Long
very
way,
much
long way,
information.
long way to go on it,
Yeah.
and a lot going on in the background with that.
Yeah.
It's a monumental undertaking, but one that I'm sure Ace is going to be proud of and represents his musical life. That's the whole idea, is
Yeah.
to celebrate Ace, and it's more than doing that, in my view. And again, when I talked about the origination of information, you can't put a price on new information that no one has known, whether it's in War Machine and, Eric Carr's drum set configuration for the Kiss Killer recordings versus the difference that he used for, Lick It Up and the Creatures sessions, all that sort of stuff, details. We're insatiable. We crave information. And
can-
that's what it's about.
But
when it
you've been talking about Ace Land, the Ace book, the upcoming Ace book, but there's a quite big section in this book that focuses on Ace. And when I read that, I had no idea the amount of chaos that was going through Ace's life after leaving Kiss. Julian, can you expand a little bit on, you have a pretty solid section about Ace's years, leaving Kiss and the chaos. Some of this stuff I didn't know. I mean, it seemed like he was this close to dying a lot of times. So can you tell the viewers a little bit about those years?
Yeah, Ace was over the edge.
Yep.
Ace had fallen to an extent where he said he had to leave the band or he was going to die is actually not exaggeration, in my view. He knew that he was on a very dangerous journey in terms of what remaining in the band was doing to his emotional state and how he was coping with it. It was more the coping with things that had become the problem rather than anything else, I think. So putting that section in is important, Daniel, because we've heard the stories of the Ace was in a very bad car crash. Well, I detail where the crash was and who was driving, and we've got the newspaper clippings to prove it. So it's important to set up that Ace wasn't a part of Creatures literally because he was a part of saving his own life, even if he hadn't yet reached the point where he was able to face those demons. He was fully enveloped in them, I think. So it ties in with Aceland to a certain degree, but it's more about the Creature story in explaining that when Kiss were talking about Ace isn't able to join us because he hurt himself, it wasn't a lie. They why they were auditioning guitarists, they wanted Ace potentially to remain in the band, and we're looking at alternatives. So it isn't necessarily the negative that it can be painted as being, that Ace was a goofball screw-up. No, Ace was a guy who needed help. And ultimately he had to help himself, even if Gene wanted him to stay in the band, even if they were calling him to come back to the band, and even if he did the European promotional tour, and even if it cost them $15 million by having their contract canceled. It's a sad story, but it's important to put it in there in its cold, hard truth. And that's why I let the newspaper clippings kind of speak to that era rather than, trying to write about it and pollute it with my own perspectives.
Vinnie Vincent arrived to Kiss. Was he the savior of Kiss or not? Everybody's saying that. Bernd is always say that Vinnie Vincent saved Kiss, but I said no. He don't save Kiss. What is your opinion about that?
I don't think he saved Kiss. Kiss saved Kiss. Gene and Paul saved Kiss by bringing in the right people to help them. And Vinnie Vincent's contribution was paramount in terms of the songs that he brought in helping them redefine themselves. Does Vinnie save Kiss on his own? No, because Gene and Paul had to make the decision to allow these other songwriters and musicians to come in, to take that weight, to try them out. And they certainly weren't sold on Vinnie because they were still auditioning people to be Ace's replacements after the album was released. So, no, Vinnie Vincent ended up in that role by default. Vinnie Vincent is very, very important. I will not minimize his contributions, both in terms of playing, what he brought to the picture. But no, Gene and Paul saved Kiss.
Good. Then we are now on the same page there. Did you hear that, Bernd? No saving.
I don't understand English.
No,
not at all.
because of, yeah. But this book, no. How do you going to think it's going to sell? It's
Don't
going to
know.
sell much, or what?
Not worried.
Not worried.
No, it's
No.
done.
It's done now. Have it sell more than you expected?
I don't have any expectations. I don't measure it. I want to see people enjoy it. I don't really care if it sells 1,000 copies or it's already done 100. I want to see people enjoy it, or to have them do a podcast about it and talk about creatures. I don't care if they talk about the book, to revisit, the tour. The purpose of these isn't about success. The purpose of these is about accomplishing something that I started, finishing it. That's much more important. Now, if people do like it, that's a bonus. Don't get me wrong. Do I want people to say, "Oh, I love that. That's better than Mass Hysteria"? Of course I do. I have an ego.
The final part of the book mainly consists of concerts reviews and concert stats, and I love stats. They sold a whole lot of tickets in Canada, for example, close to 10,000 2 nights in a row. So it wasn't a complete failure that it's sometimes people say there were concerts that were well attended, too few concerts that were well attended. But anyhow, but what I would like to ask you is, there's one thing reoccurring throughout the tour, and that's the how should I put this? The conflict between Kiss and religious America. And it's pretty, there's a lot of conflicts between Kiss and religious guys in this, during this tour. I mean, especially in the South, maybe, but there's loads of articles here where people are protesting and stuff like that. What do you think that these protesters achieved? Did they, make Kiss sell less tickets, or did this just make news and give headlines to Kiss, or what effect did these protests have on the tour?
I think Gene gets it right in his appraisal of them. What do these protesters get? They get on TV and they get their names mentioned in the press more than anything. It didn't sell tickets because Kiss could sell tickets if they were burning Bibles. They simply were so far a failure at that time. No one cared about Kiss. So Kiss probably loved the protests because it got them press. But it didn't translate into ticket sales. Neither did putting Wendy O. Williams on, for that matter, and she sure got press. in some cases, there were reviews in there that were more about Wendy than Kiss. So I agree with Gene's appraisal that most of these things, even to this day, is more about the protesters getting coverage for them and their agenda rather than changing anything else. And as Gene always said, they always made sure that they spelt their names right.
Yeah. But Julian, what about the set list then? Did they actually play Deuce and King of the Nighttime World? I think I remember.
King of the Nighttime World, yes, it's on the box set.
It's so sad living at home, far from the city and the midnight bus. It's so bad going to school, so far from me and the dirty things that we've done. I'm the king of the downtown world. You know that, and that's we, king of the downtown world. Come, live the secret dream.
But was Deuce played as well during the tour?
My understanding is it was.
Is there a
not-
recording of that? You know, Vinnie Vincent doing the Deuce solo, that would be something. I've never heard that.
Nor have I.
Nor have you. Okay.
Oh,
That's too
I
bad.
don't know nothing about that. So,
It was certainly rehearsed.
yeah.
Yep.
And again, they did throw out some different songs. We didn't know about King of the Nighttime World until, was that 2020? It was when those recordings first surfaced in the background, and that was a shock. So again, anyone who assumes that they know everything about Kiss, none of us know anything about anything when it comes to it. There's always so much more to be discovered and uncovered, and that's what keeps you moving forward. Stuff like King of the Nighttime World from the Creatures tour, that blew my
Yeah.
mind.
To take any myths and correcting the rock stars that have tell the story that you find that is a busting a rumor. That is not the correct one. Have you something here? They're shaking the ground for Gene and Paul when they have spoken about the story.
myth-busting.
Myth busting.
Yeah.
Do you have anything in this book? Something new?
Well, I don't know, because we all have a different perception about what a myth is. Again, I think that with Kiss Killers starting out, they've called it an EP or whatever, all these made up stories over the years. How those sessions comes together now that it's spelt out contractually is a little bit of a myth busting. But again, I still wasn't there to know firsthand, and Gene and Paul might read my interpretation of how things go and say that's not how it happened at all. So myth busting, I don't know, because I don't really set out with that agenda. I think the tour, we'd like to think that the tour was better than it was. It was a complete bomb.
Okay.
It did not do well. And part of that goes back to, again, the Aerosmith book was a driver. When I was researching the first Aerosmith book, and that had Rock in a Hard Place, their lowest form album with 2 missing members, and they go out on the road and they're doing, the numbers at the time were 12,200 per show average. They had a fantastic tour comparatively in 1982-83. Until the wheels fall off for them. So that made me want to go back and really compare with Kiss. Is that a myth? Was Kiss's tour more successful than we kind of gave it credit for? And the numbers kind of say they were half as successful as Aerosmith. So
I think at times people tend to view the Creatures of the Night tour as a complete failure. There were certain spots that were pretty successful with audiences, 10,000 people attending, and some of the reviews that you include in this book are also very positive. I mean, sometimes they seem to copy each other. The journalists, they read the older reviews and they copy them. Kiss is old, Kiss is out of date, and all that kind of stuff. But then on page 166, I read one that said the band was much improved since its last time here. a change due, it seems, to the substitution of guitarist Vinnie Vincent for Ace and of drummer Eric Carr for Peter Criss. So some reviewers managed to see the greatness of this lineup and the change and the move into heavy metal and more, contemporary music. So it wasn't a complete failure. I mean,
no.
they were just not in vogue, so to speak.
Well, it wasn't a success commercially in terms of numbers and gross receipts. Was it a success? Yeah. Number one, they were reinvigorated. They were hungry again. They had something to prove. They had decided that they weren't going to lie down and die, that they were going to fight. And this was the first step back in getting out there on the road. So they had a hungry new drummer on his first American tour, because he didn't tour in 1980 in the U.S. And they have a new guitarist.
If you think about that, it's the fun part that the same thing happened again 10 years later.
Yeah.
Precise the same thing.
Exactly.
Every fan thinks the album is great, but not the masses.
No.
And they have a new drummer too, and everything.
And the tour bombs.
Yeah, so that's very... the history is repeating itself 10 years later.
Can we possibly back up to when you spoke about Killers? And I thought I heard the word EP and Killers in the same sentence, Julian. I remember because this was when I was still a fan club press. And I spoke very much with Polygram, Polydor, whatever they were called back then. And I spoke, of course, with management and the American fan club, etc. And the general idea from the beginning was that it was supposed to be an EP in the US with those 4 new songs. And then somehow one discovered that, well, we won't do that. And it's probably the record company's idea. What have you discovered when you've gone through the archives for that?
Again, with Michael James Jackson's contract, they were simply going to try him out in a period of pre-production and continue on into an album sessions. There was nothing defined in Michael's contract in February of 1982 that said that the first 4 songs that you record are going to be used on a EP and or a compilation album. What is known is that they knew that they had to record new material to immediately start offsetting the loss of sales from The Elder and the international markets, and that was what it was about. So were there additional conversations in the background which we don't have access to? Again, I kind of detail what is known and has been printed in order to be able to use as evidence rather than hearsay about those things, and also misremembering, because Gene and Paul, for everything else, don't remember the day-to-day details because they were busy living life at the speed of life. It's one of my favorite things, living at the speed of life. That's literally... We interview these guys and we ask them, do you remember what you're having for lunch on Friday the 13th, 1976, before you went out and played Sweet Pain Live? I mean, we're completely delusional in thinking that these guys remember anything other than, when we look back 50 years in our lives. And none of us are living at that kind of speed that Kiss were living. Kiss lived fast. Kiss lived incredibly, and being on the road and touring and recording and having the business stuff going on. So we get these stories. What can we prove? What can we clarify?
But at the end of the book, you include an interview with Michael James Jackson. I think it was originally an interview from the Indianapolis Kiss Expo in 2018. Yeah,
and also a phone interview that I did with him. Well, it was about 10 phone interviews.
So it's a combination of several interviews.
Well, the various interviews that I did with him, because he'd be going to Starbucks or to Whole Foods, and he'd call me and we'd talk. And
I think it's a great way to round off the book, because this man put his he was the man who helped Kiss finding the sound that made them, come back, with the Creatures and Lick It Up. So Michael James Jackson, I would have preferred him to be the producer of every album in the 80s. I like the way he produced albums, but
he should
unfortunately-
have come in and done Psycho Circus.
hell yeah,
He would have
Animalize.
been-
Animalize with him and keeping Vinnie
Well,
Vincent.
he
for
did
another
part of
record.
Animalize. He did the drums.
He did the drums, but then he had to
Uh-huh.
leave. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but then they mixed down the drums a bit, so you can't hear them that great on the original. You hear them better on the remasters, actually. But what I wanted to ask you is Michael James Jackson and his contribution to the sound of Creatures of the Night. How big a part was he of the great sound of Creatures of the Night?
He was a part of the sound. How big a part? It's not about bigness, because there are so many different things that come into play. You have Shep Longsdale, who was the drum tech who basically sourced the drum gear that became Eric's drum kit. You have Nico Bolas, the engineer, who obviously a very important part of recording Eric Carr. You have the studio. You have Gene Simmons and Eric Carr going and playing to find the sound that they want to record. But number one, the most important part of that sound is Eric. It's just like you could put a guitar in several different guitarists' hands, and you're sometimes going to know exactly which guitarist is playing, because it's about the player, not necessarily the tool. God, I sound like Paul Stanley again. But you take all of those elements together, and that's the ingredient. So Michael is the part that does the production of all those elements and balances it. And when I got that 2-inch reel from his storage unit, and I was able to go into a studio and listen to each one of those drum tracks and play with the faders and mix my own Eric Carr, absolutely amazing experience. It was then that I kind of understood a little bit more about the sound of Creatures, specifically, and how those drums came together with ambient mics above and to the side, room mics, where they were placed on the snare, what the mics were. The mics would have been the choice of between Michael and Nico, presumably, but all of those factors.
Cool.
That's cool.
That's a non-answer,
no.
isn't it?
I like the answer.
No, that was a good answer.
Sounded like a great experience being in the
uh,
studio, trying out the sounds and stuff like that.
That was the most amazing to run real Kiss 2-inch tape for
Hell
yourself.
yeah.
Uh,
God damn.
Yeah.
What's left for you now to do? What book are you going to do now?
Well,
Take away the Iceland. That is the big book, but other books.
well, I have. Can I even reach it? I've
Yeah,
got Magic.
Go and get it.
Uh,
We need to see it. God damn.
Something.
There's
okay.
currently this,
Yeah.
which
Oh, that's a big one. with
Oy,
pictures.
oy, oy.
Nice. Oh, nice.
It's
So,
looking nice, that book.
it's
No,
it's-
but
it's-
what's-
Marco, you're finally getting that
Well,
book that you paid for 10 years ago.
Yeah. Have you taken over the magic book?
You stole the title.
no,
of
I'm going to try and get the name before anyone else does, because again, when you think back to the Alive Worldwide tour, 1996-97, when you listen to the interviews, when you read the reviews, the magic's back, and we're celebrating the 30th anniversary this year.
Alright, Detroit! You wanted the best! You got the best! The hottest band in the world! Kiss!
that. And I was in Scotland, in Canterbury. And I was living in Scotland, but going to university at Canterbury at the time. And I missed those shows on the Alive Worldwide tour until Finsbury Park, which I've told the story of many times. But I want to kind of dig back in and give that the expanded tour treatment that I've done for other things, because I have a lot of memos and a lot of kind of paperwork to kind of open up that. I mean, I've even got the hotel bill from the rehearsals. It's very faded on dot matrix printer paper now, but I've even got that. So that's one thing I want to get finished. I want to finish the Lick It Up book. I've got one going for, what is it, Dynasty.
Okay.
But again, these are things that I work. You've heard the timeline of how long it took to realize War Machine. I don't think about I have to have something every year, because again, I haven't done a book since Mask Hysteria came out. I know Elaine did the revisited version or a reimagination of Mask Hysteria with columns last year. But in terms of new material, I don't have a schedule. I don't think I have to do this. I need a book. That's not the way I work. I work on a lot of different things, and I'm planting seeds. Some will flower, some turn into weeds. I walk away from products and projects all the time. I want to do the Elder book, and that's the all the memos I have from the Elder sessions that I've been using for the Audio Odyssey, to really organize that, because it builds on everything that Tim did in the interviews with new information and additional stuff. So I have enough to keep me busy until long after I'm dead.
Wow,
That's good.
But that raises a few questions. Is there a project that you would have liked to finish but was unable due to, other circumstances? Is there a project that you felt this might be something, and you felt, well, I can't do this because of this and that?
Yeah.
Can you name what was it about?
It doesn't exist. It doesn't matter. I'm
Yes.
I'm not going to admit my failures.
Okay.
There's been a lot of things that haven't taken seed. There's concepts of concepts. Again, I don't focus in on those. I just wait for other people to kind of take the lead and start continuously celebrating Kissery, because Kiss has stopped touring. Now all we have are the books. Now all we have are the off the soundboards or the box sets when and if they happen. We're waiting on avatars and other things that are far out in the future, which seem more theoretical in some ways than reality. So I want to see other countries, other fans. Kiss Army Spain has done stuff. The Swedish fans, Destroyer magazine and the Kiss in Sweden book from years ago were great celebrations. Elaine as well, for the things that he does, are wonderful.
Yeah.
But there's so much more, so many areas of exploration. I would like the stuff that I do to serve as a motivation for someone to do better. I'd love to see an Australian do a fully featured exploration of Kissteria from the Australian perspective, which I can't do, to really give it the full investigation through archives and things that I don't have access to. So it's endless. I still think the Germans need to do more.
Of course.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Ben.
Oh, yeah. I have so many questions, but I know that if I ask all the questions, Marco will say, "What the heck are you asking our poor Julian Gill about? Please behave."
Yeah, but,
so
out
I will
with the
do that.
question now.
But I will behave. I will be nice.
Okay.
But I do have, actually, I have a question. There's one thing in my mind that is rattling around, and I think I have the answer for this, but I would like to have your thoughts about this, Mr. Gill. In the end of 1980, I was touring with Kiss in Scandinavia, and we went to several press conferences. And on every press conference, we heard this fantastic voice. Either it was Paul Stanley or Ace Frehley that says, well, the next album is going to be a heavy metal one. It's going to be the hardest you ever heard. And, well, we know what happened. But I'm still wondering, since you have access to material that some don't, do you know actually what happened from the it's going to be the heaviest ever until Gene Simmons is on a restaurant doodling on a napkin about the elder and the boy and everything? What is your take on that? What happened?
Well, that's the genesis of Audio Odyssey, and what I'll do in print form for that is that 1981 happened, and they didn't have the creativity.
But they had it in their mind.
Well, yeah, that it's going to be a heavy album. Now execute. And they go in and they try and they listen and they're like, blah, meh. What do we think of it? Not feeling it. So those Penny Lane demos, which we were all fascinated with, and Deadly Weapons, and we want to hear this. This is wonderful. Well, we're fans. What about the creator going and actually looking at that piece of art and saying, I'm not feeling it. This is boring. This isn't inspiring me. And then struggling to write more, and they're forcing themselves and they're under pressure. I think that's the most important thing of the Unmasked era that Mask Hysteria alludes to, is that coming off the emotional turmoil of 1980, you replace Peter Criss with Eric Carr, you're delayed releasing your album, Casablanca Records implodes, pardon me. Neil Bogart leaves. You signed a massive new, $15 million contract with Phonogram. The pressure is so much that you start second guessing yourselves and not believing in the music that you're making, that the clock is ticking. Add the TikTok in the background. TikTok. Gotta produce. You've got until June the 16th, 1981 to deliver to Phonogram a completed album that you believe in. And you keep trying, and you can't, and you can't, and you can't. And you get Bob Ezrin in, and nothing's working. You do your first session with Bob Ezrin, and it's, again, you listen back to it, and it's like, it's very animalistic. It's very primal. It's very, I don't believe in this. And I can't put myself in the place of an artist or a musician, but I can certainly understand that from a creative perspective, where I've looked at some of the things that I've done and said, this is crap. I'm not doing any more with it, and put it away. And that's what The Elder is. Then Bob Ezrin says, hey, Gene, what was that idea? And then you're like, oh, okay, we've got an idea. Now we have a motivation. Now we have something. It's different. It's going to be great. The critics are going to love us. They're going to see how brilliant you really are. And you start buying. I can understand it. So you have all of those elements of why it wasn't a hard rock album like they promised throughout 1980, of getting away from pop. So that's a very long answer, but it's about pressure. It's about doubt. It's about change. It's about being tired emotionally and having to keep moving forward because of a new contractual obligation and pressure. So it's a complex thing.
Yeah, but I love the answer. It's about pressure.
Yeah.
They wanted it very, very much. And we have all heard the stories of Gene Simmons' big box of cassettes and demos. And I thought with that, they will make it. And no, they didn't.
Queen said
they tried to use half of those demos for Killers. They didn't get any further with Michael James Jackson
Queen
than
said
they did
it the
Bob
best,
Ezrin.
under pressure, down, I guess they felt the pressure
pushing down on me.
Yes,
Indeed.
exactly.
Okay, that was the last big question we have. How do we find this book, Julian? Now it's up to you to sell the books.
Yes, the book is available exclusively print on demand through Amazon. The paperback features the tank cover. And now, thankfully, due to arrangements with the intellectual property owners, I've been given permission to use the makeup on the also still very much unofficial hardback version of the book, and it's just become available this week. It was not my intention to ever have two different covers on this, which is why I published with the tank cover, but things took a bit longer than I expected in trying to do things right by the owners of those rights. But I'm very, very happy, obviously, to have the version of the art that Claudio created, which is absolutely fantastic. So Amazon, if you do happen to get a damaged copy in the post, if your postman chews on it like an angry dog or shoves it in your mailbox and it arrives damaged, get in touch with Amazon. They're usually very good at replacing things that get damaged. If it's misprinted, which also happens, get in touch with Amazon. They do aspire to good customer service, and that's why I use Amazon, so that I don't have to deal with those issues, but they certainly will.
Julian, does that mean that you don't have a super special deluxe edition with hardcovers that we can buy from you exclusively, delivered from your own home?
I was just talking with someone today, and they're saying how they were happy that I don't bundle with a sweatshirt, but I can bundle with a T-shirt. No, yeah, I try and stay away from self-fulfillment. I am selling some proof copies signed on my website, but because of postage costs, it's generally just available for the American market because it's much cheaper. It's a ripoff to send internationally. I don't want to be part of gouging people.
Okay. Then you're gonna do marketing for the podcast too here now. Where can we hear Julian every week?
Every day, it must
Every
be.
day if you want that too. Where can we hear you? What podcast, Julian?
Oh, we're the KISS FAQ podcast, and Daniel's a very important part of it, along with Lonnie, Mark, Andrew, sometimes Ken, Nigel, Alex. Again, very large group of people. We generally broadcast live at 9 a.m. Pacific time on Saturday mornings, and throughout the week, in many weeks, other material pops
I need
up.
to translate that briefly, Julian. That's like sex på kvällen in Sweden. So you know that sex
5
Saturdays.
5 in summertime.
6 på lördagar. Yes.
And 5
Continue
in
with the story.
summertime.
And the thing
Yeah,
is,
so what, are we the PissFac podcast then?
yes,
Very good,
yes, you are.
Julian. He knows his Swedish.
No, you don't, Howard. But have you seen the Destroyer? What is this?
I did. And, thank you very much for featuring the KISS FAQ podcast. Again, just like the podcast, that was, driven by our creative spirit, Daniel, to get us to, open up about our experiences. So we appreciate the feature and love how it turned out. It has a happy ending.
He threatened me. He said, if I don't get the Arctic, I don't want to be in the Let Me Know podcast. So I said, okay, we do Arctic. He said that. So,
Thankfully, he didn't say that.
No. So should we thank Julian, or have you something more now, Bernd?
Oh, yes.
Are you waking now? You have awakened. Okay.
I'm using this. Kong Strong.
That's not good.
Turns every brain on fire.
Okay. Some sort of energy drink, or what is?
Yeah.
That's sad. Bernd should not drink that. It's not good for his heart.
Okay, let's see what he has to say.
Oh, because I discovered 2 things recently. One of them was in the Destroy magazine. That is that the people involved with the KISS FAQ podcast, you never use their last names, for the exception of Mr. Jill. Why is that? Oh, it's a secret.
Question for? Wait.
I think it was for you, Julian.
Oh, for me, for me, I've never thought about it. I generally never put name tags on us either when we podcast. Again, we're just 4 fans.
Yeah.
So I don't need a name tag.
And that's pretty cool, Julian, because we've been doing this for well over a decade, and I still can't pronounce Lonnie's last name.
What is his last name then?
Wayshore or something.
Something?
Something
Uh,
strange. It looks Dutch or something.
Loney Wayshore Jr.
Yeah, I can't say it. So
Wayshore.
that's the importance of surnames. We don't use them that much.
Yeah.
First
but the-
album was Revenge, he say, and favorite song Black Diamond.
Yeah, he's a big revenge guy.
But I found out Ken's last name through another podcast when he did a guest appearance. And I was like, oh, so that's his last name. I'd like to know
His
people's
real name
names.
is the Voice of Reason.
Yeah.
His real name is George.
Oh. Like,
Costanza.
is that the same George that are a monkey in the children's books? Curious George?
Curious George, the monkey. Yeah, Curious George.
Now
Very
it's time
good
to
band,
close.
you know.
Yeah.
We're going off the rails now. Marco,
in
get us
Swe-
back track.
In Swedish, Nicke Nyfiken.
Yes,
Yeah, that's the one.
Curious George.
And we are going to close this podcast now. For now, Bern have drink too much King Kong, and that's not
Oh.
good for us.
But Bernd, what is the name of Alphonse Åberg in English? Do you know that?
I have no idea.
Alfie Atkins. Got you on that one.
But I do know one
Elfie
thing.
Atkins. Okay.
But I do know one thing, that my son's name is Alphonse, and he picked it himself.
Good
So
pick.
then I know that in English, Alphonse is Alfie.
Alfie
I will tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say, "Hey, Alphonse, how you doing?"
Yeah.
And he will be so pissed at me.
Should we close now when you have get drunk, Bernd? We close this pub now. I
I'm
think
only,
that's best for you. So you don't
I'm
say
only-
any more dummy stuff here.
I'm only into Kong Strong, but
Is that a
I'm-
sex drink or something to get?
it's for me, Marco. It's for me to know and for you to find out.
I don't find out. Now we close this. Thank you, Julian. So before he got a boner here, I think it's a strong way here. Now. We close this, and thank Julian for this.
Thank you, Julian.
And you're welcome back again.
Thank you all very much for
And-
having me on the show.
And don't miss to order this Bible this week. This is a very good book. Good work, Julian.
It's upside down.
Thank you.
Hej då!